Welcome, everyone. Good boy, Tucker. This is learning at its most fun.
Hello there and welcome everyone. My name is Jacqueline and I am one of the trainers here at Redtail, and I'm super excited for another Thursday webinar regarding calendar syncing. Now, calendar syncing is a super important tool that can help you get connected with outside features inside Redtail and help you manage some of those activities a little closer. Now, that being said, our calendar syncing can consist of a couple of different tools within the CRM. We will be covering all of these tools today. However, I just want to emphasize that we will not get to see everything surrounding each of these tools today because they are limited based on my own technology that I have been equipped with. So first we have iCal. iCal is excellent. That is going to be an internet-based calendar, any internet-based calendar. I know we normally hear Apple, and you're going to hear me say that a couple of times here, but it is just any internet-based calendar, and we can link that to our Redtail calendar. Then we have something called Retriever for Tailwag, and this is really for any desktop-based office system. So if you are someone who is using an office-based system that is on your desktop, has been downloaded, it's the Outlook version that is on your desktop, this is going to be something for you. This is going to be exclusively for desktop users though, and you're going to hear me say that again a couple of times today because it is such an important distinction. Now, if you are like me and you're on a Mac, then you are probably going to be more interested in our Retriever Cloud for Office 365 or Retriever Cloud for Google. And these are your other two methods to syncing calendars to Redtail. We'll talk about a couple of other different important tools that you could potentially use, like potentially a calendar software or scheduling software, or potentially even Zapier. But we'll cover those right near the end today. Awesome. So let's jump in right away to our first calendar syncing tool, and that is iCal. Now, a couple of really important things to note about iCal is, first and foremost, iCal is a one-way feed, meaning that it is really just going to push things from Redtail into your calendar, not the other way around. So this meaning, if we go into a little bit more detail here, some of the requirements of holding iCal will be that you have to have the Redtail CRM. So lucky for most of you, that is definitely easy to check off. You will need your own Redtail CRM. Then you also will need an internet-based calendar. Now, like I said, this doesn't just have to be an iOS device. This doesn't have to be your iPhone or your iPad. This can be your Outlook calendar, your Yahoo calendar, your AOL calendar. Now, the benefits of this calendar would be that you can access your Redtail calendar from your phone, you can access it from your desktop computer, your regular computer, depending on where you are using that internet-based calendar. It is accessible. Now, I will say that it also syncs only once daily from Redtail, so it's not a continuous sync. It's going to be something that only updates once a day. And then items that we need to note about iCal. So segueing in from our syncing notice, we want to also note that it does not allow editing or activities to sync on the synced calendar. Meaning, if you edit something in iCal or you edit something in your calendar that's a Redtail activity, it is not going to come back over to Redtail. Only if we edit something in Redtail will it carry over to iCal. So we need to keep in mind that this is really a one-way feed. It is awesome for a read-only view, almost in comparison. So if you have someone who maybe needs to be able to see your calendar but not edit it, this is a really great use. And then finally, another item to note is that it's going to require setup on every single device. So if you want to set it up on your phone, if you want to set it up on your desktop computer, you're going to need to set it up on each device. So this is not something that if you set it up on one device, it automatically is intuitive enough to set up on each device. Now, it does look good, but keep in mind, most important, it's not for changes. So overall, this calendar is a good idea. Like I said, if you have someone that needs almost a read-only view of your schedule, or potentially you're pretty satisfied having just a read-only view, maybe linked to your personal calendar or to your professional calendar on your phone. Now, that being said, setting up iCal, we're going to pop into our CRM here. And setting up iCal can be relatively easy. The first step to setting up iCal is coming up to your name in the top right-hand corner, coming up to preferences. And then we're going to come down to calendar management. And first things first, you're going to want to make sure that you've set your iCal access from no to yes. So mine is already set, luckily, don't have to change anything. But once we've set that up, then we can go into the calendar. Beautiful. And you'll come up to actions right next to navigate and in between users. And you'll come down to the second to last option, which is subscribe to iCal feed. Now from here, you'll notice mine says select calendar. Now, if you had any other applications that were linked here, you could absolutely choose another one. Mine is easy and I can just select link calendar. Now, I won't worry about doing that. I have a lot of other calendars linked, so I'm just gonna go ahead and hit cancel. But then from there, we would see everything carry over nice and easy. Excellent. So if we ever forget how to do this or how to set this up, I do want to encourage you all to use your help desk. Now, if you've forgotten, you can always come over to your little question mark, in the top right-hand corner. And then, I am just blind today. I'm going to need to expand this a little bit. But then we can come into the Redtail help desk and it should open up a new tab for us. And from here, we should just be able to search iCal. And lucky for us, that is the first set of directions that pops up. And if we ever forget, we first need to remember just to go to preferences. This walkthrough will nicely articulate for us exactly how we can go about setting up that iCal feed, and then reminding us that the iCal is a one-way sync only originating from Redtail. So just keep in mind, the most important highlights of remembering if you're wanting to utilize iCal is going to be that iCal is a one-way feed. And we'll go back into our slideshow for this. iCal is a one-way feed. It does require setup on each device that you want to put it on, and it does not allow for editing or creating of new activities onto that synced calendar. Excellent. Perfect. Now, that being said, if we bounce into our next slide, we have Retriever for Tailwag. Now, Retriever for Tailwag is going to be the best way to push from Redtail, but you can also push back to Redtail. So unlike iCal, where we had a one-way feed where it was just pushing from Redtail into our Outlook that's desktop based, now we can push from our desktop based software, Outlook, to Redtail. Now, a couple things that we need to notate about Retriever for Tailwag. First, our requirements are that we have to have the Redtail CRM. So just like iCal, no difference there. You do have to have the Redtail CRM in order for it to link to the Redtail calendar. Second, we have to have a desktop version of Outlook. And I'm going to repeat it again because it's very important. If you do not have a desktop, you cannot use Retriever for Tailwag. Retriever for Tailwag is still pretty common because if you are using that desktop version of Outlook, this is how we need to connect it to Redtail. Now, the benefits of having Retriever for Tailwag, if you are using a desktop version of Outlook, would be that we can access your Redtail calendar from anywhere. So for example, if it's on your phone, if it's on your tablet, if it's on your computer at home, you should be able to access your Redtail calendar. So unlike the iCal feed, it's going to be accessible on every device after setting it up on just one. And two, it will link the calendar with scheduling tools through Outlook or Google as it's possible. So we can link these calendar tools continuously by the Retriever for Tailwag. Now, a couple things that I do want to note about Retriever for Tailwag. First is that Retriever is not going to be a continuous feed. So we are going to see Retriever update a few times a day. It's not going to be a continuous, instantaneous sync. It's going to be something that needs to be updated every so often, or not as more commonly, it's updated less frequently. So we can create Outlook. In addition, we can also create activities in Outlook, but they will not link automatically to contact records. So you will need, for example, to come in once an activity has been created. And if we go over into our CRM really quick, we can actually demonstrate this. So if we're in the CRM and we have a new activity on our calendar that doesn't have a link contact, we could potentially need to come in and link that contact manually. Now, this is why we also recommend that regardless of whichever calendar sync is best for you today, that when you are creating an activity, you generate it from Redtail. Because keep in mind, with Retriever Cloud, with iCal, and with Retriever for Tailwag, if we're generating the activity from Redtail, it makes it easier for us to carry over that information into these external systems. And that's purely because they simply don't have as many fields or requirements. So it's easier if we kind of do the work in Redtail and then let it carry to all other systems. Excellent. I'm going to go back into our PowerPoint now. Now, like I said, other important things we want to remember. Our second aspect would be that the activity type of task in Redtail will sync to the task section of Outlook. So this is kind of a glitch that comes up, but just keep in mind, if you are coding things as activities in Redtail and using Retriever for Tailwag, and you're coding them as tasks, they will come up as tasks in Outlook, not in the calendar. So we just need to be careful about our use for task specifically within Redtail if we're using Retriever for Tailwag. Now, other important things I just want to notate about Retriever. First, it will only sync when it will only sync data when your computer is on. So like I said, it isn't a continuous sync, but it still syncs throughout the day. I believe it's once an hour at the most. But the data will also only sync when the host computer is on. So if you installed it on your desktop at work, and you go home for the evening and you realize when you got home, oh no, I forgot to add an activity into Redtail, and you add the activity to Redtail from your house at 8 o'clock and your computer's already been turned off, it most likely won't push to Outlook until the morning when you have your computer on. So that's something we want to keep in mind with those desktop-based versions. Excellent. Now, finally, I'm just going to reiterate, because it's so important, if you are not a desktop user, you cannot use Retriever for Tailwag. So even if you're a Mac user and you have the Outlook-based system for your Mac, you still cannot use Retriever for Tailwag. Awesome. Now, before we jump in, I did mention earlier that you should put this on only one system, or excuse me, not one system, one piece of technology. So unlike iCal, we don't want to put this on every single piece of technology we have. We can't. So we just want to keep in mind that this needs one host system, one host computer for each person that wants to link it to their calendar. So if you put it on your desktop at work, then that will be where the Retriever function lives. Excellent. So now that we've kind of talked about what that looks like, let's go back into our CRM here. Excellent. And let's learn how to install it. So first we would need to go up to our question mark, once again, in the top right-hand corner. Perfect. And you'll notice right at the bottom, we have Retriever for Tailwag. So if we go ahead and click on this, it will automatically start downloading for us so we can begin that installation process. Now, I did give you all a very big speech about how you cannot use Retriever unless you have a desktop. And I unfortunately don't have a desktop. I am on a Mac. So my functionality here is a little bit limited. However, if you ever need help, once again, you can go back to your help desk by accessing your question mark. And you can always locate this article, which is the download and usage of Retriever for Tailwag. And it explains to you how you can begin that downloading process. Then kind of walking you through what each step is in that downloading process for Retriever for Tailwag. How to properly set it up so you can decide, for example, where it needs to go, or we could also witness the folder path, any custom installation steps. Perfect. We can also see our general options from here and how to access those, what it looks like once the installation is complete. Excellent. Contact options, so downloading contacts from Outlook. Those calendar options, so how far back we want to go downloading our calendar. Task options, so this is once again that task area. You can't unfortunately change that is how tasks are read in Outlook, but this goes into detail about explaining how to download a task, how to download completed items, how to keep those in the system. And then finally, after you're logging in, you should be taken to the main Retriever screen, where you can then look at your preferences, your reminders. If you are an admin, you'll have admin options. And those admin options are to clear contacts, clear calendar, and clear tasks. So keep in mind, you do need admin options in order to access those. Now, finally, you can also go into detail about the features within Retriever Cloud here. So if you ever forget, if there's something that maybe didn't register completely, or you go back in time and you go, wow, I really wish that I would have remembered that, this walkthrough is available on our help desk at all times. So you can always come in here and access it. We also have our support staff on call ready to answer any questions about this, or you could also schedule a training. Retriever is a very commonly used tool still. It's often misunderstood because of that difference between, do I use my desktop version or can I use a cloud-based version? But it's still relatively easy to set up. So we are also happy to help you get this set up as well. That being said, though, our next option is Retriever Cloud. So if you're not someone who has an Outlook-based system on your desktop, or you're like me and you're a Mac user, you can also use Retriever for Cloud to link either your Office 365 account or your Google account. So let's pop in. Important to remember about Retriever Cloud. Retriever Cloud will be an instantaneous syncing process. So it's constantly updating, constantly syncing, because it is a cloud-based calendar. So what we do is, first, we need to assess our requirements. First being Redtail. We have to have a Redtail calendar, sensing you all notice the theme. 2, we either need to have an Office 365 or Outlook 365, Microsoft Exchange, or Google email account in order to use Retriever Cloud. Now, some of the benefits, and this is personally my favorite way to sync my calendar, would be that you can access the Redtail calendar from anywhere, and it's going to be instantaneous. So it should be something that's updating constantly. Unlike iCal and unlike Retriever Cloud, like I said, it does have that instantaneous sync, but just like Retriever for Tailwag, this is also something that you only have to install once on one system. So for each user, you only need to perform this task once on your desktop, and then you should be able to have a solid sync after this. Next would be linking the calendar with scheduling tools through Outlook and Google accounts is possible. And this is one of my favorite reasons to use Retriever Cloud, if you can, would be that this would be how we can link Calendly, Schedule Once. I'm trying to think of the other popular scheduling services, but if you are utilizing some sort of scheduling service where your calendar, like your Outlook calendar, is linked, you can use Retriever Cloud to get those activities into Redtail. Calendar sync to and from Redtail also allows activity types to sync from Redtail. So if we have an activity type within Redtail, we can potentially have those transfer into Outlook or Google. Now, items to note about Retriever Cloud specifically. Once again, I want to point out, activities created in an Outlook calendar cannot link automatically to contact records. So the system is not intuitive enough to automatically link it with a contact record. Now, if calendar invites are sent, they may see text in the Redtail activity description. So if you, for example, are someone who sent out a Zoom link, or if you're a Calendly user like myself, I do find that the invitation or the bulk details of that interaction are kept in the description of the activity. And I can show you what I mean by this when we jump into the CRM. Awesome. Separate calendar and contact folders are created in the email account. This does not sync to default calendar or contacts folder. So this means that when we create this calendar sync, what happens in Outlook is a whole separate calendar will be created dedicated to Redtail. And this is where we need to plug in those Redtail activities that we want to transfer over to the CRM. However, something I do want to remind you all that I've already said, but it's just incredibly important for the functionality of calendars in Redtail. If you're not already, we recommend making Redtail your primary calendar, regardless if you use your Outlook calendar or you are a Google Calendar person, just because, once again, if you're using Redtail, the Redtail calendar to document everything, not all of those fields exist in Outlook and in Google. So you're essentially having to do more work than you need to if you're putting the activity in Outlook or in Google first, and then having to transfer information into the activity once it's imported into Redtail. Excellent. So really, this is personally my preferred way to sync my calendar. This particular way, remember, is a two-way sync. So it's going to push and pull information and share it evenly. It's going to be an instantaneous sync. It should be uploading relatively easy and pretty swiftly, and also from not just, keep in mind your desktop, if you pull it up on your Redtail app on your phone, you can also access it there and it should be pretty instantaneous. Excellent. That being said, let's go set up Retriever Cloud. Let's go back into our CRM here. I'm going to bounce out of this guy and go back into our main. Now, in order to access the Retriever Cloud sync, we will need to go up to our name in the top right-hand corner, come down to Manage Your Integrations, and then we'll scroll down and find Retriever Cloud. Excellent. We're going to hit the little gear in the top right-hand corner and go ahead and click Settings. And now you'll notice you have a couple of integration settings here. Now, syncing contacts is pretty self-explanatory. It is going to sync your contacts. It's going to be based on the tag groups you currently have. So if you don't have any tag groups, or you don't want to limit yourself to just a tag group, you can also leave this unchecked. Now, next would be syncing activities. And this is kind of the crux of your calendar. So I do recommend checking this box. Now you'll notice from here, you'll also be able to select certain activity types. Now, if you're someone who says, I'll never need to know if I have a Zoom meeting or a webinar or vacation days on my Outlook calendar, that's totally fine. You can absolutely choose to select just a few. I do ask you to keep in mind that when you are creating your calendar sync, if you do decide to take off some types and you decide later that you need to add them, you will need to come back in, you will need to unlink the calendar sync and re-perform this action. So I'm not saying it's a bad thing. You may decide over time that it's, you're missing some types and you'd like to see those. It's no big deal, but I just want to give you a heads up that you would have to come in and change them automatically. Excellent. Syncing completed is also a good option. When we sync completed options here, what happens is when we sync something, or when we complete something in Redtail, it sometimes falls off of the Redtail calendar. So then it'll also fall off of our Outlook calendar. So if we want to make sure that our completed activities are staying on either our Outlook or our Google Calendar, we can absolutely leave them on here. And then finally, syncing deletions. I also like to recommend this one because if you are using one of those scheduling softwares, we want to make sure that if somebody deletes one of those activities or comes in and reschedules, that it's also syncing into Redtail as well. Perfect. Once we have that figured out, we can either select enable Outlook or enable Google. I do have a Google sync, so I'm going to click enable Google. Perfect. And it took me to select my account. Beautiful. And now I'm just approving my security features. And it looks like I've successfully authenticated Redtail and Retriever Cloud. Beautiful. Now, if you are an Outlook user, once you have that Outlook sync, it should take no more than 2 hours to really start to see changes on your Outlook calendar. And you'll notice that you might just have a regular calendar for a little while. This is exactly how it should look, unless we've had any major updates in the last year. Once we start to see that sync, you'll notice you should have a Redtail calendar that is specific to the CRM, and this is where everything should generate. Same sentiment, if you are also keeping in kind of the back of your mind that you can't put just anything on your regular calendar. If you want it to sync to Redtail, it will have to sync from this specialized Redtail calendar that we've created. Excellent. Now, my Google users, if you do have your calendar, it does appear pretty similarly. It will create a whole other calendar for you, and you will also need to perform the same task of getting all of those different activities into that separate calendar and only generating activities to Redtail from that Redtail calendar if you're generating them from your Outlook or your Google. But keep in mind, if you are someone who has created Redtail as your primary calendar and you are planning on using it, don't have to worry so much about generating activities from this particular calendar. Because as long as they're generated from Redtail, they should absolutely be 100% good to go. So just as a review, once we have that set up, you'll notice if you come back down to Retriever Cloud, we can go ahead and hit settings. And now all of a sudden we have our updated integration settings. We can disable that Google Sync at any time if we need to. Awesome. All right. Now, if we go back into our PowerPoint here, and we head into just our last couple slides, we're going to review which one would potentially work best for you. So keep in mind, iCal is going to be just a one-way feed. It is going to be just a push from Redtail, no pulling from any other systems. It's a very read-only view that we can establish with any internet-based calendar. So not just Apple-based calendars. It can also be an internet-based, preferably because that's what the I stands for. Now, our desktop and our desktop Outlook, otherwise known as Retriever for Tailwag, will also be our push that we can use from Redtail, or we can also pull from Outlook. So this is something that we're going to install on our computer in a desktop fashion. We have to have a desktop in order to use this one. Keep that in mind. Cannot have a Mac to use Retriever for Tailwag. And you'll be pushing the information from Outlook as well as pulling it from Redtail. And finally, we have our Retriever Cloud, which is our Outlook 365 and our Google Calendar sync. And this is an instantaneous sync that'll function across multiple platforms, like for example, your desktop computer, your iPad, your Redtail mobile app, all in one location. So we can also use this one to link together scheduling softwares. So if we are using a Calendly or a Schedule Once, we can also use this particular link to link those scheduling softwares. Awesome. That being said, there are just a couple of other options I've hinted to today. Like I've talked a little bit about Calendly, and there's a third one I do just want to mention because these are the three primary ways that we can really pay attention and be actively trying to keep up on our activities. So if we go over here really quickly, I did want to talk a little bit about integrating with Calendly and how that looks. So once you have that calendar sync set up, you can use a software like Calendly to link your Outlook or Google Calendar. So that way, kind of in an inadvertent third party, you are linking it to Redtail, because there currently isn't a way to link Calendly directly to Redtail. But if we come up to your name in the top right-hand corner and we go into Calendar Connections, perfect. Now mine is already linked to Google, but I could also add another calendar account if I needed to. Oh, not with my basic plan apparently. But if you go into Calendar Connections, this is where it would ask you to either link with Outlook or Google. So then you could link with the same email that you set up that Retriever Cloud sync with. Excellent. Now, another system we could potentially utilize would be Zapier. Now, if you're not familiar with Zapier, Zapier is not a calendar sync. It's actually an automations tool that is designed to connect lots of different platforms together. So a Zap will send you either a notification or excuse me, it wouldn't send you a notification. Redtail would send you a notification. It would send you a new calendar activity when someone schedules something in Calendly, or potentially it could create a new contact when an activity is created. So you could potentially use a Zap from Zapier to generate a new calendar activity. But something I do want to point out about Zapier that is different, Zapier, like I said, is not a calendar sync. So if you generate this activity, it will also leave the activity stagnant. So if you try to update it through Zapier, you can't. Once the Zap is finished, then the activity lives in Redtail and there's nothing else connecting it. So you would have to edit the activity directly from Redtail at that point. Excellent. Now, finally, the Redtail mobile app. And unfortunately, there's not a great way for me to articulate this one other than if you haven't already been using the Redtail mobile app, I would highly recommend downloading it, getting it into your software, and getting into the habit of using it. You can create activities, create notes from here, complete activities relatively easily, view your calendar. So this is something we can easily get done. Now, if you did have any sort of questions about which tool would be right for you, I highly recommend scheduling a training with one of our trainers. Please feel free to reach out to us. We're more than happy to assess what your needs are, whether your needs are going to be a more desktop-based solution like Retriever for Tailwag, a cloud-based solution like Retriever Cloud, or potentially maybe iCal would just be an easiest solution for you and your team. But don't forget, if you need any help, you can always pop into the help desk. You can always reach out to us. But thank you all so much for attending our Thursday webinar today on calendar syncing. Thank you so much, and I look forward to hearing from you all again soon.
Thanks so much for joining us today for this particular session. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to give us a call at 800-206-5030, option 3 for support, or just shoot us an email over to support@redtailtechnology.com. Thanks a lot and have a great day.